Hello everyone and happy new year. To celebrate the new year, Ubisoft gave us some insight into some stats from 2024 of Rainbow Six Siege, and it's given us some quite interesting stuff. For example, the diffuser was planted 650 million times and it was disabled 125 million times. That means the attackers, when they had a plant down, had an 80% success rate of winning that round, and the defenders had a 1 in 5 chance of being able to stop that active diffuser. And one of the major things they gave a lot of insight into here is actually a lot of the trap operators on defense. Now, they mainly only go into 3, being Kapkan, Frost, and Lesion. Why is Thorn not there? Because it may have been a bit embarrassing to see how she's performed compared to everyone else, because we all know Thorn isn't doing too good. So using the stats which have came from this post, as well as the graphs we get during the designer notes, we get quite a lot of interesting information about these operators. Now, I just want to say something. The information that comes from the operator graphs, which are posted in the designer notes, they take all of their information from Emerald and above, both on PC rank and on console rank. Whereas this information that was posted in this New Year's post, I assume covers the entirety of the game, which would also then include the ranks below Emerald as well as casual, I assume. That being said, however, it has typically shown that over the past 10 years, a lot of trends that will happen in these higher ranks do trickle down into the lower ranks as well, and even casual. So although not all of that data is presented in these graphs, the trends do typically follow the lower you go, and there aren't major significant changes. So with that in mind, using all this information together, we can say that from a pick rate perspective, Lesion is the number 1, Kapkan is number 2, and Frost is number 3. Then when it comes to their win rate, Kapkan is number 1, Frost is number 2, and Lesion is number 3. And then when it comes to the activation rates of their gadgets, that doesn't mean kills with their gadgets. That means if someone hits a goo mine, a Kapkan trap, or steps in a frost mat, they don't necessarily have to die for this to count. It goes number 1 with Kapkan at 309 million, then number 2 with Lesion at 258 million, and then number 3 with Frost at 102 million. Now, starting to compare these operators together gives us quite some interesting results. So looking at Kapkan compared to Frost, the common trend over the entirety of 2024 has been that Kapkan has had a higher pick rate than Frost and also a higher win rate. However, they were a lot closer together than Kapkan is with Lesion, for example. Kapkan still has a higher win rate than Lesion, however, Lesion has the highest pick rate out of the 3 operators, and the distance between them is quite further than it is between Kapkan and Frost. But looking at the activation rate between Kapkan and Frost, it does give us something quite interesting, because you can have sort of 2 perspectives on this. Because you could simply say that although Kapkan and Frost have quite similar pick rates, the data shows that a Kapkan trap is 3 times more likely to be triggered than a frost mat. This shows that although they do have similar pick rates, Kapkan is therefore much more effective because there's a higher chance that someone will hit his traps compared to Frost. However, you can also look at another side of the argument here as well, because you could say that Frost and Kapkan's pick rate and win rate are quite similar. So it could be argued that although frost mats are hit 3 times less than a Kapkan trap, the overall impact of a frost mat being hit compared to a Kapkan trap being hit is much more significant. Because although hundreds of millions of less frost mats are stood in than Kapkan traps, she is still performing extremely close to him. You could say that there are other variables in factor there, maybe because she has the pocket shotgun and she also has an ACOG. That could be argued that that does have an effect. But I would also still argue the fact that this does show, although frost mats are hit significantly less, they may have a potential higher impact than a Kapkan trap. I think that's quite a cool piece of information to take from this, and it shows the strength and weaknesses of both Kapkan and Frost. Now, it's when we start to compare Kapkan and Lesion, I find stuff very interesting. So, if we're being honest, Kapkan's trap is probably one of the most easiest traps to counter. They are limited to doorways and windowsills. You can scan them with IQ, they can be hacked by Brava, they can be disabled with EMPs. They do have quite a good number of counters. Now, what I find very surprising from gathering all this information is that although Lesion has a much higher pick rate than Kapkan does, Kapkan has a higher activation rate than Lesion does. If we are all being honest, by all means, that should not be the case. Lesion has much less counters than Kapkan does. Lesion's gadget is classed as a mechanical gadget. Kapkan's traps are classed as electrical gadgets, and all electrical gadgets typically have the same counters, being IQ, Brava, EMPs. Anything that affects an electronic all typically share the same counters and properties. Mechanical gadgets, however, are the gadgets which can't be seen by IQ, such as a frost mat, such such as Legion's goo mines. To put it in its most basic way possible, Sledge's hammer is a mechanical gadget, not an electronic one. These are gadgets which, like operators that hack stuff or use EMPs and that use jammers and stuff like that, don't have an effect on. And Lesion is one of them. He kind of only really has one counter other than shooting them with a gun, and that's Twitch. Of course, explosive operators like Flores and all that, they count too, but that works on anything. But by all means, goo mines are harder to spot and clear by the attacking team. That is just a simple fact of the operator. They are more versatile than Kapkan traps because they can be placed anywhere and aren't just limited to door frames. He has more than Kapkan does. Kapkan only has 5 traps, Lesion has 9, and especially with their area of effect being quite wide for activation, which is something I personally don't agree with, but I'm going to try and hold all of my personal hatred for Lesion as an operator out of this video. But with all these factors in mind, that he has less counters than Kapkan, more gadgets than Kapkan, more versatility than Kapkan, and a higher pick rate than Kapkan, I actually don't really understand how Kapkan has quite a larger activation rate compared to Legion's goo mines. Again, like I said at the beginning of this video, this doesn't mean kills, this means simply triggering this gadget. By all means, Lesion should easily be number 1 here. He has less counters than Kapkan, he has a higher pick rate than Kapkan, so there's more presence and more chance of you to stand on goo mines. He has more goo mines. This is one of the few times I've looked at factual stats in Rainbow Six Siege and simply went, I don't get this. I don't know how this is the case, which is quite interesting. From a personal experience, as someone who plays Kapkan and Lesion a lot and plays against a lot of Kapkans and Lesions, I would personally say that when I play Lesion, I have more people hitting goo mines than I do when they hit my Kapkan traps. And on the flip side, when I'm playing against these operators, I personally stand in goo mines way more than I hit Kapkan traps. Let me know if you feel the same way about when you play with and against these operators, but that's my personal experience there. Now, ways I can explain why this is happening can be a few different reasons. To begin with, like I said at the beginning of the video, we assumed that the data provided for the activation rate is coming from the entirety of the game, whereas the pick rate and win rate information is coming from Emerald and above ranked on both platforms. Now, all information we've ever had in Rainbow Six Siege has implied that a lot of the information in these graphs typically trickle down to any rank as well as casual. Typically, what is played in Emerald and above ranked is reflected throughout the whole game. However, simply it may just not be the case with Kapkan, for example, and throughout other aspects of the game in the lower ranks and in casual, people are playing way more Kapkan than they are playing Lesion compared to the information of Emerald and above. That might simply just be it. Might be a boring answer, but that might just be the simplest and honest answer, is that lower ranks and casual players play a way more Kapkan than they play Lesion, hence why he's getting higher data output than Lesion is, despite Lesion being more prone to activation than Kapkan traps. But let's say that isn't the case. Let's say the statistics follow the entirety of the game, and overall, across the whole game, Lesion does truly have a higher pick rate than Kapkan. Well, there actually can be some explanations here as well, because there is a lot more variables for Lesion than there is for Kapkan. And I'd say the major big difference between them is the fact that Kapkan has all 5 of his traps in his pocket the moment he spawns in, but Lesion has to build up all 9 goo mines all through the game. That means that in the prep phase, Kapkan can drop down all of his traps, and typically the most average Kapkan player, myself included, and I'm sure you listening right now, we would both agree that by the end of the prep phase, or even just after it, all of our Kapkan traps will already be placed and prepared for the round. I think we can all agree there. Whereas in Legion's case, we can't place all 9 goo mines at once. Lesion is an operator who benefits most for staying alive the longest. And that right there may truly be the reason why, despite all facts saying that Lesion should have a higher activation rate than Kapkan, Kapkan has the higher one because Lesions are dying before they get the chance to place all 9 goo mines throughout the entirety of the round. I mean, that does make quite a bit of sense. Think of a Kapkan player, for example. They place 5 Kapkan traps in the prep phase, they die within the first 20 seconds of the round. At the end of the day, all of their traps are already placed and each single one of them can be detonated throughout that round. Then look at Lesion instead. He spawns in with 1 goo mine in his pocket, and by the time the prep phase is about to end, he gets a second one to place down, and then so on and so forth. Gradually throughout the round, he will get more and more goo mines to place. But if he's playing like that Kapkan player we just mentioned and he dies within the first 20 seconds or 30 seconds, he's not going to have all those goo mines placed. He's going to have probably at most 3 by that point. So by all means, the Kapkan player has therefore gotten off better than the Lesion player. And I truly think that is the most likely reason out of anything. It's purely because the fact that lesion requires a bit more skill than Kapkan does. People always take this the wrong way when I say this, but Kapkan is a low skill operator. I don't know why people get angry when I say this, because I literally play Kapkan all the time. I think a lot of people agree that Kapkan is a low skill operator. He isn't complex like other operators are. He just places traps on doorways. I think it's quite hard to mess up with Kapkan, whereas lesion, you can make more mistakes. You can put goo mines in terrible positions. You can put them in not smart locations, and you can do that with Kapkan as well, but I feel like Kapkan's a lot harder to mess up with than it would be the placement of a goo mine. So by all means, at the end of the day, Legion's goo mines should perform better than Kapkan traps. They should be activated more. They have less counters, there's more of them, and they're more versatile. But I think rather than it comes to what properties the operators have, I think a lot of this comes down to the player at the end of the day, and that is why Kapkan is getting way more success than Lesion is. But let me know your thoughts on this video. Drop a like if you're proud of me for making a video about Lesion and hardly giving any single input on him, because I have a lot to talk about that operator, and I'd love to do a solo video on it, but I know a lot of people might hate it. If you watched this far in the video, comment saying goo mine, more like poo mine, so I know you watched this far. Have an incredible rest of your day. I love you all. Stay safe. Peace.